Dr. Morris Simon, thank you so much for joining me here live in Dallas, Texas. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I am so fine. I want my audience to know and remember that February is American Heart Health Month. And I've got Dr. Morris Simon here to give us some key information that can make a difference. Dr. Simon, when it comes to heart health, what's the difference between having risk factors we can control and those that we cannot?
Sure. Well, the risk factors that we can't control are things like age, family history of heart disease, our gender, as well as our race and ethnicity. But fortunately, there are lots of things that we can control. Risk factors like diet, exercise, the amount of sleep that we get at night, the amount of stress in our lives, and importantly, making sure that we really stay away from tobacco and alcohol products.
I don't know who can afford those at this point in life, doctor. I really don't.
Absolutely.
Do you have any practical tips for people looking to improve their heart health?
Yeah. So again, I think that we all can probably do a better job with our diet, for example. So when we look at our diets, we want to really increase the amount of fresh fruits and vegetables that we take in and minimize things like red meats, saturated fats, and ultra processed foods. It's also so important to exercise. So really moving our bodies, making sure that we're walking every day, doing things like taking the stairs at work rather than the elevator if we can. We talked about minimizing stress. That's so important. Also getting a good night's sleep, getting anywhere from 7 to 9 hours of sleep at night. And then finally, I can't emphasize enough, as you said, trying to completely eliminate tobacco products and really minimizing the amount of alcohol that we take in.
You're really on target, and I know that you are. Because, one, I don't know how people afford me personally these days. Okay, I don't know if you've been to the store, but I have been to the store. So I'm almost a semi-vegetarian. So maybe some factors will push us to eat better
Out of force.
Exactly. Are there any groups that are at high risk other than others? We need to say that.
There are. And again, it's important for us to recognize that heart disease is the #1 killer of all Americans. But there are also certain groups that appear to be more vulnerable. For example, Black Americans have the highest risk of developing heart disease and unfortunately also the highest risk for dying. We also see that heart disease goes undetected for longer in women. So oftentimes women have heart disease that's diagnosed later in its course. And then finally, we're starting to recognize that Americans in rural parts of the country have a higher risk for heart disease, in part because they don't have access to preventive care. They don't have access to hospitals when heart disease prevents. And so it's sort of a vicious cycle. So we want to make sure that those groups are really aware of heart disease so that they can put more emphasis on prevention.
So what are some of the reasons for higher risk groups, and what advice would you give them?
Sure. So we know, again, that those risk factors like high blood pressure, diabetes, overweight and obesity are more common in certain groups. So this is why we want to make sure that people understand those risk factors and also understand those practical tips that we talked about to make sure that they're managing those risk factors appropriately.
Resources, that's always key in anything. How do we find the resources to help us assess our heart health?
Well, sure. One resource that Bayer has is a heart health risk assessment tool that you can find at seeyourrisks.com. Again, that's seeyourrisks.com. This is a quick 2-minute tool that anybody can use to assess their heart disease risk factors. But it's important to take that tool and the education that you get and talk to your doctor so that you can make sure you understand those risk factors and, more importantly, understand what you can do to manage those risk factors.
I want my audience to know that Dr. Alanna Morris Simon is a board-certified heart failure cardiologist at Bayer. Dr. Simon, before you leave my audience, I need to tell you my audience is made up of people born between 1946 and 1964, okay. And they're called boomers, and your information is so on target for them. As you leave them, what would you like to say?
So absolutely, age, as we talked about, is one of the strongest risk factors for heart disease. So we want to make sure that we're living long, healthy lives, that we're thinking about those risk factors like diet, exercise, blood pressure, diabetes. But again, making sure that we're working with our doctors really closely, talking to them about those risk factors to make sure that everything's under the best control that we can get it.
Dr. Morris Simon, this has been such a delight to speak with you and hear information directly from people on the front lines. Thank you for being my guest on the Valder Beebe Show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Hi, I'm Valder Beebe, host of the Valder Beebe Show. We have over 1,000 videos on ValderBeebeShow.com and YouTube.com/ValderBeebeShow. We upload new videos daily. Our site is a modern baby boomer platform with news and information important to boomers. Subscribe to YouTube.com/ValderBeebeShow and stay connected as I interview the world's most fascinating people.